There's so many people on Discord right now. Because the Realm Royale craze.
Right.
Oh,
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our June edition of Dinner with the Devs. I'm your host, Wayne, part of the marketing team here at Schell Games, and we have our Pittsburgh Knights, our premier esports team in Pittsburgh. All right, ladies and gentlemen, there we go. And so we are rolling. So as Mike fixes our audio fallback, let's get some introductions. So we're going to start with our guests, especially with the boss of the Knights, and then we'll go all the way down to our Schell Gamers. So go ahead and get us started.
I am the CEO of the Pittsburgh Knights, founded the brand December 1st of last year, and I have a long tenure in esports and created a lot of teams, raised them from the ground up, from the amateur level and all the way to the pro circuit, and now I'm here back in Pittsburgh. So came back to the hometown because I love sports.
Awesome.
All right, I'm Mark Darwish. My Twitter is mdarwish. I'm the CTO of the Pittsburgh Knights. I've done some cool stuff that you probably use every day, such as I founded Google Hangouts. I'm also published in Virtual Humans, and I also helped put the rovers on Mars.
He's so much cooler than I am.
He's like cooler than all of us.
You should have gone last. Like the bar was here when I was like, I love playing video games, did it professionally. And then he's like, I made Google Hangouts. I made the software that you probably use in every
NASA,
meeting.
Google,
Like,
going in.
I put a rover on Mars. Oh gosh.
Yeah, I mean, I like how he ended with it. And I put a rover on Mars.
I mean, honestly, the things, I mean, it's going to sound a little weird, but the things that you guys do every day are just as impressive to me as what I just told you that I do.
He's being humble.
No, I love it.
He's being super humble.
I mean, I can't market anything. I can play computer games. My Dota rank is like, my MMR is like trash tier, and you're all here like, oh, you can do Mars things. Well, I'm like, I can't click video games, but I want to help you.
I can't click video.
I thought I did a pretty soft intro. You went pretty hard. I'm glad that I went before you, but go ahead, David.
All right. So I was there day one when the night started. I've been the esports coordinator for a long time. Just recently, about 2 months ago, I moved to Sports Pittsburgh, which is the CVB for Pittsburgh. Brings tourism into the city, and essentially, like, I run their sports management program, or I help manage it. So I'm working very closely with the Knights to bring esports events into the city, filling up our stadiums and stuff.
Cool.
For like IEM or DreamHack, hopefully.
Nice.
Fingers crossed.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Okay. So if DreamHack doesn't come to Pittsburgh, we know who to blame.
No.
So I'm Mike Liu. I'm an engineer here at Schell Games. I write code, and I guess I really enjoy working on the VR projects that we do. So that's kind of like my wheelhouse. Yeah.
I'm Jared Mason. I am a narrative designer here at Schell Games, so that means I'm in charge of a lot of the story and dialogue that goes into our games. Also an avid esports fan, particularly in Heroes of the Storm. And I am absolutely in love with the direction that esports have been going, and I'm very thankful for you guys to be bringing that to Pittsburgh.
Hey, I'm Tyler. I'm off camera, but I'm a game artist and level designer guy at Schell, working on a lot of random stuff. I'm a big esports fan too, and I'm here to pressure you guys to make a Dota team. That's the entire reason I'm here.
He's already pressured.
Yeah, this guy's all on top of
over
it.
Both directions would be great. Yeah.
Horse pants? Are you a fan?
I like horse pants.
Okay, horse pants.
I mean, Chew 8 is my guy that I like to
Okay.
follow, but horse pants I saw is part of the organization, right? Yeah.
Horse Pants is my boy.
Yeah,
I drink with him all the
he
time.
lives in
He's great.
Bridgeville.
He's arguably the most hilarious streamer in the Heroes of the Storm.
The guy's
like,
memes are deeper than I can dive.
it's amazing. It's amazing. It's stacks on stacks of memes.
Well, cool. So first, I guess I'll go to Rob. So I second what Jared said, that we're like just super pumped that Pittsburgh has a premier, esports team, and we're following you and we're excited about what you're doing. So why did you decide to bring like the Pittsburgh Knights, or to start a team in Pittsburgh?
Oh, okay. I always get this question because this had always kind of stemmed from a childhood past of mine. I grew up during the age of like when Roethlisberger came to power and won the first Super Bowl in like 2005, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was just living in Pittsburgh, and if you're a Pittsburgh native, you know how diehard sports fans here are, and that had such an impact on me growing up. And being 130 pounds, 5'7", didn't work out in high school football. So I retained that that stat, and I looked elsewhere, and I found video games, as everyone else in this room, and there was an opportunity to meld the two worlds together. About half a decade ago, 5 years, I went to LA, fell in love with this thing called esports when it was very, very tiny, very small, and then in about 2016 there was an explosion, a surge of like live streaming, and that's kind of like what we're doing right now, right? Live streaming, where the evolution of this technology, cable is dead, right? Everything's going to streaming, and I was like, man, I really understood why the city was so passionate about sports. I just kind of wanted to bring it all together in one little mixing pot, and I saw the opportunity, and I came back home, and I couldn't get away from it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, it's very true. Like, just Pittsburgh as a sports town is, I mean, I grew up in Ohio, right? And, we got like Cincinnati and Cleveland, but coming to Pittsburgh, it's just the way they view competition in general, and just the way the people of this city are so passionate about competing. It's a perfect spot for something like that.
I've never seen it. I'm not from Pittsburgh originally. I came here for college, but I've never seen a city that uses a uniform as a daily outfit so
right.
often. Doesn't matter what temperature it is.
Yeah.
They got the uniform on over their overcoat.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, the hoodie and then the jersey. But I grew up in Pittsburgh, and so I've always saw that. So whenever I went to school in North Carolina, I was like, oh yeah, I mean it's cold, but whatever. You're like, what are you doing? I was like, whoa, this isn't a thing. Yeah.
It's weird that that we're okay with seeing someone with a Steeler jersey at church, right? Like on an outing setting. So I think that's kind of cool, right?
Yeah.
If I went out to LA and I was wearing like
Yeah.
that doesn't make sense.
Well, I mean, if you have a 10 o'clock service and kickoff's 1 to 5,
Yeah.
right? And there's only so much you can do.
True.
You order chicken wings like to arrive at the time of the service end.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And then, with the rise of food trucks in Pittsburgh, it's just perfect. Like, no, you know where I'll be, right? Yeah. Pack
You gotta
those up
stay in
and
your
you
route
go.
right. Walking home.
Oh, man. Cool. So I forgot to say, if you have any questions, please, you can put it in the live chat, or we have a form, Ask SG Devs, bit.ly /Ask SG Devs, and we'll go to some of those questions. You guys have any questions or comments, feel free to jump right in. So Mike, so coming from Google and putting a rover on Mars, what brought you to the Knights? Or to esports in general, and then the Knights specifically?
Well, I kind of was, I'd done 20 years of software engineering, and I was winding down the software engineering effort, and I was thinking, I really want to move back to Pittsburgh. I'd gone to college here in the 80s, and I grew up in upstate New York, and I always wanted to either move back here or move back to New York. I really love the people here in Pittsburgh and New York, and I did, and I started making friends here again, and I was at a startup thing with Alpha Lab, and I was just networking to see, who was interesting in Pittsburgh and what was going down and what was new. And, I've been playing video games forever. I used to work in a video arcade in the mall back when that was a thing. And,
That's awesome.
Tilt? Yeah. No, it was one other. It was a different one. Timeout was the name. But, I started seeing the rise in like Day 9 online and the streaming, and the Brood War was probably the first competitive esport that I ever watched,
Yeah,
and it was
Brood
so
War.
exciting.
Best game of all time.
And I was terrible at all of them, but I wanted to get involved.
Okay.
And so I met James, who's also with us, CEO, right?
Yeah.
Co-CEO.
Oh, well, James is our partner. He's the president of the Knights, and I'm the CEO. We're partnering together, and we have a very rich history in esports. And as much as we pride ourselves at putting together teams and games in the virtual space, we also pride ourselves at putting together teams outside of that realm. And who would have been a better CTO than the guy that did all those things, and putting the rover on Mars and
Pretty solid.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
so
well, we don't know really where the tech is going to play us. We need some obvious things. We need like a cool team app, just like the Steelers have and the Penguins have, but with better content, like better Twitch integration and Twitter integration and all that cool stuff. But we also want to take it to the next level. We want to figure out a cool app that we can do that make the community stronger, so that you can go and have a league at your high school, you can go have a league at your college, you can do all Pennsylvania league, and maybe we can also add adult features like maybe we can do betting or something. If esports betting ever becomes a thing, that we think that'd be a pretty cool idea.
I think it's going to become a thing.
I think it's going to become a thing
I
too.
think it's already a thing. Where it's
Well,
legal.
it's definitely a thing. We were hoping it's going to become a legal thing too.
Yeah.
So that's where I come in. I was like, this is going to be so much fun, and I don't have to press the buttons for playing games because as much as I enjoy playing Dota, I'm terrible at it. But I can help these guys.
Very good. So speaking of building the app, building the community, Tyler, before we were on camera, he was talking about your unique structure. If you wanted to kind of elaborate on that, I kind of forget.
Do you mean the mix of games?
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess this is something that I run into a lot because and we've talked about it sort of indirectly, but I'm a Dota guy, and that's my entry to esports, and I don't really watch other sports, and everyone else I've run into is sort of very similar. Aside from the Knights banner seems like one good way to bring people together, but do you guys have I guess thoughts on how to sort of intersect people who are just coming for their one game, how to introduce them to wider titles and different experiences?
Well, one thing that I can say, I've done a lot of event organizing in the collegiate scene around Pittsburgh. That's kind of how I got my shoe in the door. And that problem is epidemic.
Yeah.
Pittsburgh is full of pockets of communities that are just out for their own game. They maybe made a league for their friends or for their college club, but they wouldn't dream of working together. And really what we're going to see happening is some kind of track and field style events.
Yeah. So that's a tough question. After years of trying to create some form of overlap, where maybe a cross-pollination of fans going into one game, or I've actually tried to do that, where I had my League of Legends team and my CS:GO team hang out together.
Yeah.
Right.
They don't mesh at all.
Yeah.
They're completely two different demographics, two different genres. I think it's cool if you were that particular team's fan to see that. Not sure of how well it works because that's not something that you can grab in terms of analytics, right? So you have to treat each game as its own genre. They'll always ask me what happens if a pro and they change a game on you and Halo 2, Halo 3, a version of the game comes out the next following year? Well, a pro will always be good at their specific genre. and we'll take even Ninja for example. He's been all over the news, right? That guy is a king of battle royale games. He was always relevant to games that are very, very similar to the Hunger Games and a virtual space, to the endemics that are watching the stream. But they will always follow that specific genre in game. For you being Dota, I wouldn't assume that you would be a CSGO fan, so that wouldn't be something that we'd be able to tailor to. We'd only be able to tailor to like the gaming market, but it would be completely alienating to you. But if you were a fan of a team and you got into another game and you saw the Knights brand, that's something that you would stick to immediately. Yeah. As much as you would see if Pittsburgh had like a basketball team, right? If you saw anything that Pittsburgh, that's something where you originated from, you moved somewhere else, you're always a Pittsburgh fan, most likely. I think the turnover rate is not as high on that area, but that's where we saw the room for localization when you add a team name or a location to a team name. I've done that with the Renegades, where it was like the Los Angeles team, you claim the stake there, and I think that's where also esports teams need to start to optimize as well, to garner local fan base. I recently went to a Steeler game, and you see all these videos of like the crowd in the stadium, 50,000 seats being sold out, and you can feel the adrenaline of like an esports final, right? And if you've actually been to one, you feel it, and then you go to a Steeler game. Yeah, it's very similar, but it's not the same. It's not 50,000 people of like Team Liquid, right? It's a mixture of everyone rooting for like the American team at a World Cup or something like that, right? So it's missing that really die-hard fan base that teams need to capitalize on later, and that's where we jumped onto the idea after the Overwatch League. They were like, "Oh, we're gonna have city slots," and we're like, well, we're going to have a Pittsburgh team, and we're going to guide the local market first, kind of like starting from the bottom, because esports is global, right? I can't throw a football to my friend in Korea, but I can definitely play like a game of Hearthstone with him, right? Yeah.
That's interesting, Chip. I'm sorry. That do you see that the future of organizations that are not geographically based right now, like Liquids or Dignitas or Fnatic or something like that, do you see them switching to trying to find that foothold in a geographical area, or are they just going to continue being kind of these organizations that exist in like an ethereal space?
They're going to exist as far as they want to keep that global market, but if they want to assimilate when it does change, that won't be for a long time, just because of how far they've gotten on their own.
Right. But you do think like basing yourself in a city is kind of the future of esports?
I do, in a way, if new teams do come up. Mm-hmm. But I think that our audience and our demographic is smart enough to know where they're from and where their backing is from. It's like, as a Cloud9 fan, I know that Cloud9 was out of San Francisco,
sure,
right? As for TSM, also where they started was in New York and the Bay Area, right? Like the F at Bay Life shirts and stuff, right? If I think about anything about CLG, I know it's from New York,
sure,
because they're backing. Because I'm a diehard esports fan. I know who's like backing them, right? And that might not work for an endemic, but that's why I think long term, like 10, 15, 20 years from now, we might see some form of like rebranding in that structure. But that's where I kind of see it. Yeah.
If they end up being doing that kind of rebranding, it has to be authentic. And like he touched on, it's hard to be authentic about repping a city if your headquarters isn't in that city. It hasn't been in that city for 10 years. I think the biggest thing that's going to trigger a move towards a different form of branding for a geographic location is just going to be the different leagues that sprout up. Like the Overwatch League, they forced them to make entire new brands just for that city, and if they didn't rebrand, then they wouldn't get into the league.
Right.
So when will they start doing it voluntarily? That depends on how new leagues end up working well together, or if they don't. Because some competitor to Activision could start up a new league, and it won't fit in with the Overwatch League. They'll buy spots that are different from from what the Overwatch League has, and then they'll be trying to rep 2 different cities at once, or
Right.
even 3 if they're based in a different one.
So you would have like the Dallas Fuel, but then like a Dallas, a different team name, and that just kind of splits and destroys the brand altogether, right?
Right, and it'll be there's going to be a breaking point where that's too much for the system to handle,
Right.
and the cognitive dissonance of all the people who are fans of trying to be fans of their city, it's going to be too much.
Right.
Yeah, I think I was watching your guys in Austin with some people who are not esports fans. They play games, but they don't watch, competitive. And like seeing sort of, I was surprised by like the legitimacy of like Tempo Storm means nothing to them, but like Pittsburgh Knights, like obvious team, the colors from the city I know, like they were rooting for the Pittsburgh Knights because they're from Ohio, and that's just an association tangentially. So yeah, it seems, anecdotally, but it seems like it's more powerful for people who may not already be that deep into
Right.
esports, but like to sort of introduce a lot of people to it.
Yeah. Gives you a place to start.
It's exciting, yeah.
I mean, if you go and you watch the Super Bowl with your family, people who don't know anything about football are going to say, "Who are we rooting for?" They want the easy target about who's the good guys,
Yeah.
and the easy answer is our city.
So it's funny that you say the easy target. I remember like years ago when I went to an esports event, and I went with a friend. I was asking him like, oh, they had no idea about esports, completely endemic, non-endemic to the market, and we took them to the game, and she was like looking at all the logos. I was like, out of all the 10 teams, what do you like the best? Who would you cheer for? She goes through all of them. I like this one, and it was Echo Fox. I was like, wait, why? Because it's a fox.
Right.
Fox are my favorite animal. And I was like, wow. That makes much more sense on, when like 17-year-old kids that made their like Call of Duty 360 YouTube channels. They called it Optic Gaming because like the acronyms were OG, like original gangster.
Right, yeah.
Right? So like it's way different from, because like no one thought about branding 10 years ago, or when those games came out. They just thought it was, oh, this is cool because we got to see this, and they didn't think like long term down the road. And Team Solo Mid was only created because the mid laner, because he just typed in solo mid, he wanted to play mid lane all the time, and he created an empire off of it. Congrats. But yeah, there was a lot of thought in putting into Knights branding. Lions being one of the most popular animal in the animal kingdom. So there's a lot of depth that went into it.
Yeah.
So,
Go ahead.
like, the first time that I ever heard of, like, an esports team was in the Brood War days. So in Korea, they had, like, these, like, sponsored teams, and there was, like, the
Right.
OSL and the
Pro
ESL
League and
Yeah.
stuff.
and Pro League and things like that. And most of the teams were centered around the sponsorship, right? So you had, like, STX Seoul or, KT1, right? But now we've kind of like started to move away from that, where like your brands nowadays are not specifically tied to a specific to a sponsor company, but instead now you're tying yourself in this example to a city. Do you find it harder to find like sponsorships because of that?
Believe it or not, no. So how we work on that. Oh, it's funny that you bring up the whole StarCraft days, because I am very much a diehard Flash fan, for sure.
Oh yeah.
Flash versus Jaedong, the
Yeah.
Jaedong is huge in terms of historic esports. But yeah, it's not because the market hasn't established itself in that area yet. And you work together as a league instead of individual teams once you get to that moment. So for endemics, no. As long as you have the players, right? I can sell sponsorship based off of keyboards, mouse. That doesn't mean anything. That just only means off of wins, right?
They're looking for metrics. and
Yeah,
wins.
they're looking for the metrics and the wins and the eyeballs for endemics, right? However, for non-endemics, no. I had a recent conversation with a company that was based out of Minnesota, and they wanted to promote their product global, worldwide. So it gives an opportunity to break into the global market. I'll even spill one for you. Since esports has such a global reach over something else, right? Of traditional sports. Let's take 412 for example, the clothing brand. I'll even use that as an example. 412 is only runs into your problem. 412 is not known in California or anything. Only it's only registered to people with the area code 412 in Pittsburgh, right? But to have it attached to something like Heartbread, right? It gives them the ability to market elsewhere, cross globally, use the black and gold colors in China and Asia, right? Black and gold is really big in Asian market. Believe it or not. I can't remember the historic factor behind that. There was like some rapper or whatever, not Wiz Khalifa, but there was something that happened, and it's like the sign of like luxurious lifestyle or something like that. But for Pittsburgh in the name, it's not really about that. Actually, we had a couple opportunities going to leagues across seas, like in Europe and like Korea. And they asked us, like, would you be the Pittsburgh Knights? No, it would just be the Knights, right? You wouldn't call when you go like across seas, you don't call it Pittsburgh Steelers, you just say it's the Steelers. I hope that answered your question a little bit.
Thanks.
Cool. So we have a couple questions from the chat and from the forum. First we'll go to one of our regulars, Super Voodoo. It's always good to see you, man. They say it's taken a long time and still taking time for a career in game development to be taken seriously. What do you think it would take before a career in pro gaming is taken more seriously, if ever? Who would like to take that?
You mean playing kids games for money?
Yeah, right?
That's right.
Well, okay, that's hot topic right now because I always get emails and messages like, oh, how do I get into esports? What do I do in it? How can I stick out? I'd like to help you, and I'd like to just get my foot in the door. That's a very hot topic because esports is so small. I'd like to compare it to Hollywood almost, right? It's a networking thing. It's weird because people kind of like fail upwards, but no, I'm just kidding. But no, in esports, it's such a small and niche market that there are only a handful of opportunities, and everyone kind of knows each other, and it is very much the Hollywood model of like, you know, if you're good, you're in. And sometimes even if you're good, you might not make it in because you don't know anybody, right? I would say you have to treat it kind of like that market and reach out, because I think the very first time, the only reason why I got into it is because I got lucky after meeting the owner of SK Gaming at like a burger joint. I ran into him after E3 and I told him I was making content, and he was like, you knew who I was out in the middle of the public, because I was a diehard fan. I didn't know, like, no one knows the owner of SK Gaming, but since I was a diehard fan, I was like, wait, you own the team. But
cool.
Yeah, so it was kind of like a weird story there. But there are no real qualifications because since the market is blowing up and growing, you know, I have to be transparent. The Knights aren't necessarily a big company yet, a massive one, but it's the same as it's waiting, and all those other fields are developing over time. I think schools have come to us and they're like, how do we develop a curriculum? Maybe there's a certificate at the end of the day where they're esports certified. But yeah, I think a lot of endemics or non-endemics that are new to the space just need to kind of like come in and learn for themselves and prove value from outside in, as I did. Because I was never a manager at first. I was a video producer for a production company and came in.
Oh, yeah?
So it's weird. There was a journalist. I won't say his name. There's a journalist that now
Call him out.
on E-League. He was like, man, I was just a normal journalist in the regular news world, and when I came into esports, man, the bar was so low. I came in and I set the standard. I'm not special at all, and I was like, that was my experience as well. So it's still such a small space, and when you come in, just know esports and the ecosystem itself is still in its infancy, and there's a lot of opportunity. It's more entrepreneurial than anything. You have to kind of like make the opportunity for yourself.
Okay.
So there is a ton of opportunity. It's crazy how skill based it can get, because like when it comes down to the kind of jobs that are out there, they're almost all in small startups. And a lot of these companies, they don't take a lot of people to run, and they're designed from the ground up that way because the system consistently hires people who have a wide variety of skills that can accomplish a lot of tasks and who are super driven, are happy to work for more than the 9 to 5. So the opportunity is there. You might not get paid as much as at a normal like endemic job, because again the expectations are lower, but you'd be higher than you would in a normal job. You'd have more influence, and as the thing grows, you'd be at the top. So there's so much opportunity to insert yourself into the field and be the pioneer. Even now, it's only a 10-year-old industry.
Yeah.
20-year-old if you want to count all the stuff that happened before Twitch TV. But
Right.
I mean, Brood War was awesome, but it wasn't in America. So we can't really count it too much. So having a little bit of experience goes a long way. And for anyone looking to get into the industry, I'd just talk about focus on acquiring your skills. Get all the Adobe suite in. Get management. Get working professionalism skills down. It's really hard. There's so many young people going into the scene. The diamonds in the rough are the people who are willing to do the work and be professional about it, because that kind of skill is really hard to find in people of high school to college age.
Okay.
Speaking of which, you said there's so many young people in the scene. A lot of what I've seen personally, and this might not be true for the entire industry, but a lot of young people who are very inexperienced but are very good at the game will get in, maybe even start their own organizations, own their organizations, but due to their lack of experience and sometimes maturity, just blow up and kind of throw away golden opportunities.
Easy. Yeah.
Right? And so are you seeing that there's going to be more experience coming into this industry and kind of saying hey, hold on, give us the reins, you guys play the games and we'll manage the business side of this?
I think that's definitely the movement that's coming. If not through, I mean, the old guard's going to stay the old guard. They're pretty entrenched at this point. But the new crop of entrepreneurs that exist, it's going to be a mix of endemic talent and non-endemic talent coming together and forging partnerships together. It's a lot like Rob and James right now.
It's
honestly.
definitely a mixture. I would say there was an example of back in the day when we were growing a team, a video producer. I think he was extremely honed in Hollywood. He wanted to come in and start doing esports content and do esports narratives. And he was engaged because of the opportunity. The potential of it and the opportunity of it could explode. So he came in and he wanted to do all of these things. He wasn't able to. He just lost engagement off of it because it's its own separate beast. However, you kind of have to use something from the endemic space inside and nurture it and kind of have a mixture of a melting pot together with that to be able to be successful in the space. That's where I think that has been proven the most optimal and successful way of it. I think you kind of see some teams that even come in with venture capitalist backing, and they come in and they want to rule the space and they want to do all these things, and they fall flat on their feet in the first 3 years figuring out this thing, and it's transparent. You can see it from the outside.
I think there's a few external factors though that really been affecting the landscape of esports in the United States in particular, right? Because video games as a profession it's an entertainment industry, and there was a social construct where people would be kind of looking down on anyone involved in that field because it wasn't seen as legitimate yet. But a few years ago, right? The government started doing grants for like league players and stuff like that.
Yeah,
and
right.
like now
You
there's
get visas
there's an
for
actual
it and
like
stuff.
you know, there's a more legitimate backing now for this kind of like profession, and I think that's enabling the United States to really build its esports like economy and community and things like that.
Once you make a game that can run on the laptops they give out in schools now.
Yeah.
I think a cool point also, and it spans the last 1.5 conversations, is that the esports, it's not just about the players, right? So to become a really popular streamer or a really competitive player, it's not just only about you. It's great that you have the raw talent, but we have, like the Knights, we have a whole staff of media people backing you up and helping promote
Right.
you and making clips of you and getting you sponsorships and all these things. And there's so much more. It's just like, it's similar to like the Steelers and the Penguins. There's a whole crew of support staff that are very important to you, and that legitimizes the whole business. So, you know, maybe you don't, maybe you're like me, you can't click the buttons fast enough, but you can still do something really fun in esports genre, and you can still be involved, and you can help them win.
Right.
Cool. I guess Tyler, you're still off screen. Do you want to move around so everybody can see you?
You wanna?
Yeah, we can.
We'll
I'll
speak down.
give you a voice, that's fine.
Yeah, that's right. All right, so along with that, there was another question. Well, look, so first, I think Alex asked if we're gonna have a I Expect You to Die sequel coming, and if there's gonna be an update. We're still in talks about what to do next for that game, so just stay tuned for updates, okay?
Stay tuned.
Yeah, I know that it's awesome that we get that question because people really enjoy the game. We appreciate it, but we're going to respect the Knights' time and ask questions pertaining to esports and gaming. So, let's see. Let's go with, this was one of the early ones. So what's unique about esports and community as a whole? Where is it going in the future? Will new tech like VR, AR be involved? So it looks like there's a lot in that question from this user. You kind of talked about esports and how it's really niche community and the community as a whole. So maybe if we can tackle the other two, where is it going in the future, and will new tech like VR, AR be involved?
I can take the VR one.
Yeah, okay.
So-
You want me to go on the brief part of the first one real quick?
Go for it.
So, where community engagement is extremely important in esports. So, as I said before, there was an evolution of this, and I've always used this analogy. So, as radio was the backbone for baseball, and television was the backbone for the NFL, and vice versa. They accompany each other. And I don't think anyone of my demographic, or maybe even you guys, pay for cable anymore. And most of it's through streaming. So as live streaming is the backbone for esports, right? It's the reason for that, and the reason why our demographic is so highly engaged, because it's like, you get the dopamine effect of like so much stuff in a video game compared to like a baseball, right? And every 10 minutes of like hitting the baseball. But there's intimacy. And what I mean by that is, I tweet out to, Juju Smith-Schuster, right? Or not even using him. Let's use Sidney Crosby or whomever. There's a wall of communication, a level of communication that is completely missing because they're a celebrity. And there's probably 1 in a million, 1 in a billion chance that he or she will probably respond back to you, right? Now in esports, it's a little bit different. Imagine if Crosby or Roethlisberger or Heinz Ward, whomever that you may use, imagine if they set up a camera on the practice field or the ice rink, and you got to watch them practice, right? Or in fact, he or she was able to play with some of the college kids, and you got to watch them, beat them up a little bit, right? You were able to watch that and see it, and in fact, you were able to talk to them, and they would respond back.
Mm-hmm.
So you were able to see them from their rise of power, from being a rookie to all the way being a veteran. And you were there for that journey, and then you feel connected. You feel engaged. You feel a part of their story, and you were there when you saw it. So that's where we see like this level of engagement on social media where Ninja's numbers are ridiculous in comparison to even all the other sports teams combined, right? Being the #1 influencer of that month. So that's where it is. It's the intimacy. It's the connection, and you feel like you're part of the ride.
I would 100% back that up because, like, just recently, my daughter saw a streamer, and he's a pro player for Heroes of the Storm, and she commented on his hair, how cool his hair looked, right? And so I was like, hey, I'll let him know, right? And so, like, right there in the stream, right, like, we say, like, hey, man, my daughter really likes your hair. And he calls her out by name. I was like, my daughter Eva really likes your hair. And he's like, oh, thanks, Eva, much love. Thanks a lot for that. I appreciate it. Literally 6 months later, like just this past weekend, I'm watching some tournaments for Heroes of the Storm, and she goes, hey, it's that guy who talked to me, right? And like, she's 6 years old, right? And automatically she has this personal connection with this pro player that she could never have with somebody like Sidney Crosby or Ben Roethlisberger, right? Potentially.
Another part of this paradigm is that these players, because it's such a new industry, it's not nearly as developed as like the all-stars in a different thing like sports, or even like celebrities. They don't, like, esports players don't have agents to tell them not to tweet. Tell them, like it's so authentic because these guys are just, they're kids and they have more money than God. And they're making it on the internet with no one to tell them what to do.
Yeah.
And it's like, this is the most direct connection between them and their money base that's ever happened. There's no one in the sidelines messing with them. No one to tell them, this is wrong for your brand, you need to stop it. You know.
So I have a question about the future of the Knights in particular. When's the team house coming?
I will say that I thought it was going to come a lot sooner, but some of the players didn't want to move from Europe. They were too they wanted to play in the comfort of their home. So when the opportunity seeks that, we definitely, if we need a house, we'll have a house, and yes, we'll do a house tour.
Of course.
But yeah, it was
gonna invite us, right?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. That's the second one. Are we in
Is there a house party that's gonna happen?
They're like, no, we've had like 3 tours. Or I mean, no big deal. They're just asking.
But yeah, I mean, if the market calls for it, we'll do it. But just right now, it hasn't called for it yet.
Cool. So did you want to follow up with the question
Sure.
about the tech?
So to tie in with what Doc and Rob were saying, the whole VR thing is going to be the next step in getting intimate with the players. It's going to, I mean, you can see it now in Oculus. John Carmack, the creator of ID Software, he has alluded to wanting to do this. Stadiums where, you know, you're virtually there, you're virtually in the game yourself. You know, you're experiencing to the limits of whatever the VR hardware is, the same things that the players are actually, or the characters are experiencing. So you can, you know, it's like in Dota and League, you can already see where they clicked and what they do. But imagine if you were, you know, Lena or Nasus or somebody wailing on creeps, and you could put yourself right there. That, I suspect that's going to be really soon, and it will help your engagement. Like these guys were saying, you're going to feel like you're right there, and you know you're going to ask, hey, why did you cancel your attack on this? I would have just done my A power or whatever. So yeah, it's going to take it to the next level. And for our audience members who are in Pittsburgh, we have the Oculus research is right down the street. It's down by campus at near Pitt. So cool things happening in Pittsburgh.
Yeah. Very cool.
One thing I'll add to that, the NBA 2K League, it's already in a state where they're taking players. They're taking, like, they have 3 players per team, and they're taking them and they're downloading them into the game. They're doing like 3D scans of these players.
Yep.
And making them 3D models. And that's who's playing basketball on the court. So when you're in VR, you're not watching 3 guys in headsets playing. if you're in VR, you're on the side of the court watching these three players actually play basketball.
That's cool.
And that's, I mean, I don't know how many of you guys are jonesed about a basketball esport, because I'm not personally. But I think that has a ton of applications in all the games that we play.
Sure.
I think the key with that will be like, because we've seen some VR applications come out that are integrated with like game spectating, like Dota, right? But VR itself is kind of an isolating experience when you're in a headset. You know, you can't hear the people around you, and it's not like you can really get in a room with your buddies and watch DreamHack or something in your VR headsets. Like it's an isolating experience, so it'll be important for the developers of this VR content to make sure that like your Twitch chat is accessible, or maybe if they have like a live commentator that you can actually be like in the room with them when they're discussing the plays and things like.
And you can't eat, you can't drink. It's not the same as a normal spectating experience. I tried it during the international a couple of years ago. And just standing around with a sweaty headset on.
That's fair.
Yeah,
So-
the comfort's going to be an issue, but I think we are moving towards that. Like, you know, we at Schell Games, like, we get to play with a lot of the new devices that haven't been announced yet or released yet. So, and I think that VR is definitely going to get to a place where it'll allow users to be disconnected from their PCs. Like, they could have maybe some kind of standalone device. And kind of be able to enjoy like their VR experience like wherever they happen to be. So it might, in that sense, increase the connectivity of a person to like, you know, the esports world. Right?
I think some people need some breaks from Twitch chat.
No, that is more than true. I don't believe
We
it.
need Twitch chat in the real world.
There's like a contact lens, and I can see it
Oh,
going.
Lord.
IRL stream all the time.
So, speaking about development, there we had a question come through. As a game dev and someone involved in esports, are there things pros would like to see incorporated or improved on in games? For example, improved camera views, deeper statistic sheets to be shown in replays of games, dual camera functionality and spectator modes, etc. And how reasonable is it for game devs to incorporate this sort of stuff? So there's a question for you guys, and then there's a question for them. So
Who asked that question?
So the dev question is, how reasonable is it for game
I'm sorry,
devs
who
to-
asked it?
Oh, this was from Matt K. No, I'm kidding. No, it's from. This is from.
No name given. No name given. All right.
Thank you. No name given. As I'm scrolling through all of them, I'm just working on the summary. All right. So so game devs, yeah, how reasonable is it to? Well, let's go this way. Tell us what your players would like to see in the games, and then our game devs will respond, especially with an engineer here, of how reasonable it is to incorporate.
Spoiler.
Oh, okay. Well, all right. So here's the cool thing about esports, right? And I always use analogies because it's the best way to just bridge the connection. You know, if I wanted to defeat Tom Brady in a game of football, right? There's a lot of things that you can record, and we've always talked about this too. There's a lot of analytics that you take down. Was it raining? Was it on the third down? Where was he pressured?
Were the balls deflated at all?
Yeah, yeah, right.
Yes. Yes.
Got him. But you know,
Was there a camera in the opponent's practice?
exactly.
All that stuff.
But,
That's why I still hate the Patriots.
Yeah. So you know, those things, and I'm sure the NFL does it now, right? But in esports, everything happens in a virtual world, so everything's recorded in a demo or in a game file. So you can go back and retract all of those things, and everything is there. and you can easily be taken out and put it into like a Google spreadsheet, really, to be honest. So it's like saying, okay, well, Brady was really bad on the third down, and like the linebacker had blitzed him right here on the left side, and the temperature was like at 76 or however that may or may not be. Let's recreate that over and over again so I can beat that player over and over and over again. So that's something that my players have always have asked, and what has been useful to like coaches, because you can see another like the enemy's weaknesses so much more clearly in esports, whether it be from a mental aspect, using the words tilt them. There's so many things that you can do to expose another player's weaknesses in the game. It's just up to the tools to be able to extract that information.
Okay.
So yes, the other things were to be able to answer questions for pro players to figure out what's best for them in the game. So what I mean by that is, I do a handful of coaching with the PUBG team. And I will tell you, I am nowhere near as good as they are at shooting. But I'm going to let you know, you don't have to be Brady to coach like a football team, right? It's always about asking the right questions and extracting it from the talent. To be honest, they will know the answer in some form of capacity. It's up to you to verify it for them. So if they ask you I always wanted to know what happens on like a circle shift, or how people will like distribute amongst a circle. Well, we'll go back and retract that and extract it from a demo and say, okay, this team went here, they went here, and they also were, the reason why they went there is because they're weak at like going in a certain direction, right? And they'll take that knowledge and apply it to their own gameplay, and it'll make them better players. So being able to just move quickly and answer questions on the fly for them to be verified, because since they are the applicant to be applying all the skills to the game, they will always know the answer they will always figure out the answer or know the answer to their gameplay, because they're the ones that are playing it, and they're the ones that are spot on, right? But that's for the analytical side, I guess, right?
Getting a little bit more technical. Ever since Brood War, or even before that, I think there's been the capacity for, as soon as you're done playing a game, you get a replay file that has recorded every part of that game, and you can watch the replay, but it also has all the technical details inside of it. So that could be distracted. It could be extracted into whatever kind of data you want. And it's really just up to the amount of analytical tools that you can build to get the kind of data that you want, and to dig the right data out of the massive amounts of data in that game, because it records everything.
Right.
So you need laser focus, really, to pick out the stuff that your players need to work on, and that's what Darwish is working on, really.
Cool.
Can I ask a modified version of that question?
You sure can.
So if you guys knew someone was making a game designed to be an esports game, but it's not designed yet, what tip would you give them? Or what one thing would you ask for from it?
From a competitive side or from a business side?
Either or.
Okay. From the competitive side, there needs to be a level of depth to the game to inspire narration of esports. So I'll give you this. Let's just use a couple of the hit titles right now as an example of that. So let's take PUBG for example. Love PUBG, and it has its ups and downs. Game's not really fully optimized, and there is a little bit of a dry spell with it, a little bit in the game, and it's hard to sometimes watch, but you can kind of get there. It's like almost there. You can kind of feel it, and it's right there. Fortnite, explosion, crazy, great on the business side, $100 million prize pool, want to get involved. I watch a demo of that game on like scrims, and it's terrible. It's the worst thing that I've ever seen to actually be able to watch and consume as a viewer. I need to watch it to be fun. and I see 30 people on the very end circle all stacked into the circle. They should have made this blue circle come from the vertical part. They didn't think about that someone could build to the infinite skies. So then there's that, and then the reason why I'm like so crazy about Realm Royale right now is because wow, this has like the perfect sense of like a battle royale game, because there's so much depth, there's so much statistics and mathematician behind the items that you can get. It rewards you for the kills, right? Like in PUBG, right? You don't have to kill anybody.
Right.
You'll win at the end of the game if you're the last guy to win the game. But you know, in Realm, you get the items, your reward for the kill. You're stronger by going into the next fight. So there's like so much depth that you can do with a game on the competitive side. As long as it has depth, it's fun to watch, right? The reason why we watch like sports, because it's like top down, right? And that's why League of Legends and the MOBAs and the Dotas are so fun to watch, right? But from an endemic standpoint, you also have to come up with a way of like to tell my grandma or my mom that if you hit this guy 100 times, he's not going to die because he's tanking and healing. That's a hard concept for people to understand that.
That stuff needs to be conveyed visually.
Yes. So
without any.
so some games do really well in that, right? Like PUBG, you shoot a guy, he dies, right? Like it's pretty realistic. But like in League of Legends, you hit somebody like 100 times, there's like a little health bar, and you have to convey that information. That's really difficult. So somewhere in the middle, right? And then there needs to be somewhere it's easily accessible in understanding of like watching the esport. That's why CS:GO kind of lives on television and it can work, because it's really easy to comprehend. Like, okay, they're coming in around and shooting each other. One guy shoots another. Easy to understand. Overwatch, that's so difficult.
It's so complicated.
6 people, 6 on 6. There's camera angles everywhere. And
Powers.
there's powers,
What's the
there's class-based
status?
shooters. It's so hard, and so many things are going on. And the only thing I really understand if I'm my mom or anyone is like, oh, this guy has his ult and he's about to use his ult, and the other guy doesn't have the ult, so he's going to win. Right? And then maybe on the upside that I catch something that happens, or like or you know, from a video production standpoint, I'm a technical director. I'm trying to find when that clip actually happened, instead of replaying, because you want to watch it live. So that's from the gaming side of like, okay, it needs to be watchable, it has to have some form of depth to it, and needs to be some form of like, the depth is like the mid and maxing options, right? I'm sure you play like some form of an MMO where you're like, oh, I'm augmenting slots in my armor to make sure that I'm like great at the raid. But for the business side, it's a little bit different, right? No one's owned the big game in the NFL. The IP rights don't exist for a football. The developer has an IP rights. So you have all the power to control the NFL and to be able to create partners within the team is very skeptical, but that's why the esports space is so unstable right now. From the business side, I would create something where it tracks teams with rev share or something, right? The NFL is so used to being able to have a cut from the football sale. But that doesn't necessarily happen in esports, right? So figure that question out and give us an answer, because I want to know that one. But yeah, that's where, from the game side and the business side.
Yeah, that's a good answer. Thanks.
When it comes to viewing a game and what things make a game engaging visually, it's one, does this game have clarity? Was it designed in such a way that it's simple enough for people to understand visually? Also, that means clean up the UI so that it's not in your face while you're trying to watch what's happening on the screen. And make sure the stakes are clear. This guy, in CSGO, they're planting the bomb. We all know that the other team needs to stop the bomb before it goes off. Right. That's very easy to understand, and it creates a wonderful sense of tension, where you know something's about to go down because this guy needs to stop this guy, and that kind of expectation is what puts us on the edge of our seats. And games that don't have that kind of feeling end up not doing so well. So for PUBG or some kind of battle royale game, that's the clock of the storm getting smaller, and that works pretty well. Not as well as CS:GO, but pretty well.
I think from a developer perspective, if I were working on a game that was meant to be like an esport or something, right? The way that I make money as a business is through sales, right? And I do know that there is a direct association with how popular a game is in the esports scene to my sales. But what I have to ask myself is, let's say that in order for my game to be understood by the layman spectator, that I need like very good spectator tools, kind of like CS:GO has, right?
Right.
Like you can see like where the players are aiming. You can change the camera modes to fly around. You can do a lot of stuff, right? I have to decide. I have to like weigh the costs of developing spectator tools that 99.9999% of people will never use. Only people who are running tournaments will ever really use them, right? Versus some feature that is used by my entire user base, right?
So hold on there. I'm going to argue that you're counting your engagement wrong, because when a caster casts your game, it's not just that one caster who's casting it and using your spectator tools.
It's everyone who's watching.
It's everybody who's watching is a direct person of your using your spectator tools.
So as a fan of esports, I agree with that. But like the business side is not always in these like ginormous game companies, right? The business side is not always concerned about the player experience as much as they are about the monetary experience that they're having, But like as an indie dev, like we would care about that, right? But maybe we don't have the resources to invest in that because we're a small company. But if you're like a large company, then you have someone who is weighing those costs, and I feel like there's, yeah, it's a tough problem to solve because like there's a lot of people who are very passionate about this topic.
Yeah, it kind of blew my mind when I first watched the OWL that Blizzard had put so much work into creating an amazing viewer experience. Because, like you said, Overwatch is actually really difficult to watch.
It's super.
Right? There's so much going on, and like there's so many effects and everything. And Blizzard kind of took that into account and like, okay, well, if we have purple team versus blue team, all their effects are going to be blue. It's going to be a little bit easier to track now, right? And they have like the overhead shot where you can see the movement of everybody moving around. And when I saw that, like kind of like what Mike was saying, I was kind of blown away that they poured development and resources into making something like that. And number one, it showed me you are very serious about this game being successful in an esports scene. Number two, it was, well, you're Activision Blizzard, so of course you can do something like that, right? But creating a game meant for esports from the ground up, that's something that you definitely have to take into account, right? Because you only have so many engineering hours.
Let's examine that choice for a little bit, because when Overwatch came out, they didn't have that.
Right.
It was
Okay, yeah, that was my next question.
It
Was
was-
that an add-on?
right.
Or-
They put that in once they realized that the viewing experience was completely unwatchable. Because every projectile had a different color, every character had a different aura of particles all around them, and they were all different colors. And then what you have is a screen full of different colors.
Yeah, right.
And no idea what's going on.
Exactly.
And so they toned down all the particle effects. They put fresh colors on it to make it a stark contrast between the teams. They also released new team skins so that they could sell more products, which is classic Blizzard, classic Activision.
But it does go to the Mike's, comment about the sales and everything. So if it's not directly from the game, it's a derivative of, which would be
Right.
the merchandise.
So the thing is that they were under the same exact pressure.
Right.
We have a release date. We have a certain time where we need to start making ROI. We have so much money poured into this. It needs to make the money back somehow if we're going to hold it back.
Right.
Their answer was, let's release it as is. Let's put in the esports tools once we start ramping up the level. And then recoup the cost with additional like ROI supplements.
I mean, I hate to, I don't know if you have a policy about this, but, if you were doing something new, you could use Source 2, the Source 2 engine, and just use the tools that are already out there. They've made some really good games on Source 2, and it's available for you to use. And then as an engineer, I want to put the prototype together using whatever tools I can to teach my business people that, hey, this is going to be great. Here, look, this is a running prototype. And then your business people will come back to you and say, that's great. I have some problems with this licensing model of Source 2. And you can say, hey, well, it's going to take us X months, X man years to replace this. And you get some leverage, and it reduces your risk of the engineering costs. And that's a conversation that you can meet with your engineering manager and your biz manager pretty easily.
Yeah, it's like a question of like how can you present the tangibility of that association between spectatorship and sales, right?
Right.
And I think early in the scene, right, that didn't exist because we would see a lot of games come out and esports was not big enough, and people didn't understand that like a tournament would increase your sales because of viewership. And nowadays it's becoming more of like an accepted, I guess, kind of like a business strategy paradigm, right? So things are definitely getting better, and that's why we are seeing more tools and more like spectator like focused development. But I would like to see it be better. Like, also as someone who watches a lot of esports, I'm like, I can't do this, and you have like the commentators even like during the game, they'll like comment like, oh, like we can't see this, right? And it's like, yeah.
Yeah. So we got more questions. Let's see if there's. So we have a couple of Schell Games questions, but we can save that towards the end. We have quite a few Realm Royale questions.
I tell you what, I was very excited when I saw Realm Royale because I always wanted to get into Fortnite, but I'm 33 years old and I cannot build structures in front of me before I die. Yeah, I play.
It's so fun.
It's so much fun.
It's so much more fun
This is
than all the other
everything I
games.
wanted out of Fortnite and nothing that I didn't.
So one of the devs from Realm Royale, he asked me to bring it up like on the slide. And I was like, yeah, I'll try. I don't know if it's gonna happen. I'm like, glad.
Okay.
So much
let's-
free
It's so,
advertising for Realm Royale right now.
much. It's ridiculous.
It's great. It's great.
When's the team?
Oh man, I'm.
So okay, well, don't start yet. Okay. So
I'm
let's go with these questions. First, wait, hold on, because they're all like, what are you looking for? Where is it? But yeah, so what do you guys think about Realm Royale? Will the Knights have a Realm Royale team? And then, what are you looking for in a Realm Royale team? Players, solos, duos, squads, tourney wins, master kills.
Oh god.
So they got from super general to super specific. So take with that what you will.
Well, go ahead.
Maybe we should drop our Discord link to these
I
people.
know,
Yeah.
right? I put
Until you
the
start playing.
stream on our Discord, and everyone's playing Realm Royale right now.
I know, no, I'm in your Discord, so I didn't want to announce anything because I was like, oh, God,
Everyone
I didn't
just-
want that attention. So-
It's because in the esports community right now, everyone understands of how much potential this game has, and it's like,
They're going nuts about
go
it.
nuts.
Right.
It's insane.
That's all it's been today in your Discord.
Yeah.
It's just looking for Realm Royale players. Yeah.
It's because it has such a good mixture of everything, and the games are so much faster paced than everything else too. And here's the thing: from an esports team side, you have to worry about the business too. So there really isn't any announcement for any like actual ecosystem for esports. So it's a hard conversation to reach out to players and like, hey, would you want to be a part of this? We don't know what the market is yet, right? Like how does this work? Especially there's no leagues. I think there's some like wagering leagues on like UMG or something like that, and I think Keemstar made like a weekly event for it, but there's no real ecosystem, and then you also don't have like a real leaderboard because of how they did it, so you don't know who's good, who's bad. So we're just kind of looking right now, and we don't even know if it's going to be a solo game or a duo game or a squad game. We don't know how it's going to be, except for just a super ambiguous tweet from the president of High Res to say, yo, what do you guys think about $1 million prize pool at I'm like, yeah, I would love that.
That sounds great.
That sounds great, man. Wins the official
Show me the
announcement.
tournament.
And I love how it's so ambiguous because he's like, yeah, like I'm gonna have to ask my boss. I go on his Twitter. I'm like, you're the president. Dude. Like, was that like just a troll engagement tweet to like everyone? Like you definitely have a say in something like that.
He sent it. He's like, got him.
Got him.
I mean, if that day comes and you're the only team.
Yes.
There you go.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
And we win automatically.
Or
Let's
we
go.
have so many Realm Royale players.
Yeah.
We're just all 50 players in the game.
Yeah.
We take over half the competition.
Pittsburgh Knights just rolls in 50 deep.
50 players. All invited to DreamHack at least.
What I love about Realm Royale from like a development standpoint, why I think that it can be successful, is that especially in video game development, being first to market is almost always a death sentence, right? Not always, but it can be, right? And so with the popularity of like the battle royale game genre, right? You kind of have like the Minecraft Hunger Games stuff like way back, right? Not even way back, it's been so quickly evolving. But like PUBG, right?
Way
back 3 years ago.
Yeah, it's like way back, I don't even remember back
Way
then.
back 2015.
Right.
Those dark days.
But you have PUBG comes out, has a lot of issues, right? Still working on those issues. Fortnite comes in and immediately sweeps up all the people who are having issues with that, right? And Realm Royale gets in this third slot where they're saying like, we now see 2 games where there are a lot of problems and we can capitalize on fixing those problems. And because of the nature of game development and because of the nature of the community of video games, people will hop ship, right? They will continue to go to the thing that is bigger and better every single time. Because that's how we've built our industry. We've built our industry to have life cycles. Our consoles have life cycles, our games have life cycles. And so it makes sense that our communities have life cycles as well. And that's what's really cool to me, is seeing all of these games improving on one another over time, and even games themselves improving on themselves over time.
I think so like Realm Royale, like it was like just the latest in a very long line of VR games, right? Like you had so many that had potential, like Isles of Nine and the one that their studio just closed down.
Islands, Nines, and Radical Heights.
Yeah, Radical Heights.
Radical
yeah.
Heights was Cliff Blazinski's baby after.
Lawbreakers?
Yeah, after Lawbreakers, because Cliff used to be at Epic. And,
Bet it all in
yeah.
the 80s.
Yeah, he moved over and was just like Radical Heights and took off.
But what I think where like Realm Royale really succeeds in is they solve the issue in PUBG that you were describing earlier, where there's a lull in the action by adding the forges, right? And it like kind of becomes, even though like the circle may be big, there are points of interest on the map where players will naturally coalesce and then interact with each other, right? And then I think it also provides a lot of different types of play styles that can be successful. And then I guess thirdly, like what you were saying, it definitely encourages players to actually fight each other and have interesting play.
So when you look at games that have been at the top of their genre for a long time, Melee has been top fighting game for 20 years now.
Yeah.
StarCraft is still at the top of the RTS. Counter-Strike is still the top shooter. Ever since MOBAs came out, there was a scuffle at first, but League is clearly the top dog. And it's been that way since it started, really. Right now, we're seeing that happen in front of us. There's going to be a lot of people rising and falling, but eventually it's going to mature and coalesce around one audience, because that's the nature of bigger things. They're going to eat the smaller things,
Right.
generally, unless there's something seriously wrong with their design.
What I want to see in a battle royale game, I want to see PUBG go 25 versus 25 versus 25, 25.
Yeah.
like 4 teams in the match, and like the Knights have 25 players, right? And I get to manage like a battalion of squads, right? Like that's
Check the high side.
yeah, exactly. Like it's like that's never been seen before. But I want to do like a little simulated war type thing. But
Drive a squadron,
Yeah, that's right.
motorcycles and stuff.
yeah, exactly. Just got the Mad Max thing going
Yeah.
on, right?
That'd be sick.
Stuff has been tried with Huxley like online a little while back, but never caught on. I mean, it never really started with the. I guess it was ahead of its time, like that kind of stuff. There was like 100 versus 100 battles, and it was like that kind of stuff. I don't know. They didn't have the streaming,
Mm-hmm.
and they didn't have the infrastructure now. Like now, there are a whole bunch of esports teams that love to assemble 25 players and come and play.
Right.
But at the time, 100 nobodies versus 100 nobodies, who cares?
Yeah, you can do it before, like I know in Korea they had a World of Tanks league, and the teams were pretty large. I think they were 9v9 or something like that. And like I tried watching it, and I just couldn't learn who these
Just
people
get
were.
checked
There
out.
was too many of them,
Yeah.
right?
Mm.
And like it, you know, like modern sports, or sorry, no, normal sports teams will have a lot of players, and you can like identify each individual. But for some reason, like it just doesn't seem to work in esports. What do you guys think about that?
I would actually argue that like in, you know, like basketball, football, baseball, you usually have like 2 or 3 faces on a team, right?
Yeah, that's true.
And then a lot of the other ones, unless you are a diehard fan of that team, you actually don't know them, right? Like usually in football you have the quarterback who's kind of the face of the team, or like a wide receiver or a running back. But you know, unless you're Dwayne, I defy you to name like the defensive line of the Pittsburgh Steelers, right? So.
Can I do that? I'm pretty sure I can.
I know you can.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I can.
Well, plus in all those games, you have a ball too, so you have a focus.
Yeah, exactly.
And especially in football,
That's
where
great.
we have 11 players aside, you have more downtime than you do playtime, so you can
People are
run 5
Yeah.
replays in between,
Okay.
and you can focus on
That's a
Tony
great
Brown, and you can focus on
The attention
Stava.
spans on cable are much longer.
Yeah.
People are willing to sit down and watch a
It's
game.
just more wireless and more active, that
Yeah.
usually glancing at a mini map, or, you know, it's not, you wanna look at the game footage, and in that case, they're playing as, you know, like, character from random IP.
I don't know
You
if
just
you're
don't
getting
do it right.
is like the gamer tag.
Like you
That was some of the coolest moments.
It's like the cake guy, where
Yeah.
you know.
All
My
right.
favorite.
Flash always looks disappointed in his opponent.
People used to call him like the Terminator, right? He has like a computer in his brain.
Yeah.
He's basically just like they did when he was like losing. So people would be like, oh, like you see his like face like,
Malfunction.
He's shutting down.
Like a perfect anime villain.
The recent ASL, he actually lost. Like a 20% win rate on all the maps, and he still got to the finals.
I thought they would balance. They would balance Brewdor because like it wasn't.
They didn't do any
patch
game
and
match-
stuff, right? So
patches,
they
yeah.
would just like make
Maps.
maps that were harder.
Just
versus-
All right, let's get to a couple more of these questions. I just have one. Let's see. With the rise of
match for the first time was nice. Yeah.
with the rise of
Sparkle's a crazy
esports,
match.
with the rise of esports, we saw mostly pub stompers and incredible solo players join teams and leagues to play in matches. Do you think that in the future we'll continue to see this mentality of star players, or a shift toward trained teams and players instead of the self-taught aspect?
Seems like with school programs now starting to
Mhm.
put together, you know, like we're training from a younger age for specific games, then
Mhm.
you might get a shift in that mentality.
And I think following the Dota scene, like teams, successful teams are a successful captain typically, and the players will sort of be all stars, but they're not as relevant as like the PPD or the puppy, like that captain that can lead a good team. So it depends on the game too, it seems.
I mean, and for the question about the pub stomper stuff, like, right, I think that it was like the Yankees or something like that. I mean, back in the day, even traditional sports, pro teams would play against, you know, just have open leagues, and like the pro teams would play whatever baseball team that would want to play them.
Great, that's true.
And it was just a fun thing. That will always be a spectator thing, and it'll always continue to do so. And that will be always a source of entertainment for people. for someone to be trained up, I would think no, because as a team and someone that puts together teams and manages them, I'm always looking for the active learners and the drive and something that we always constantly look for. I remember managing this player. He's from the Czech Republic. His name's Freeze, and yeah, Mr. Freeze, right? I remember just talking to him, and a lot of players that I've come across over the years always have these like key elements that made them the best. And he always told me, I close my eyes and I'm killing minions, and I go to sleep and I dream of League of Legends. And then he just tells me like all I do is just eat and sleep, and I eat my macaroni. They're goddamn minions. And I was like, okay, all right. He's like, but I always want to be better, and like I'm always trying to figure out the things, and he's constantly learning, and so those are the things that we're looking for in the players that want to be the best, because they always have the drive to be the best. And I had the same thing growing up of playing League. I always wanted to figure out what was the best thing. How do I improve my gameplay? What was I the worst on? Do I know everything? Do I know all the champions that they do? Do I know all the aspects of the game? There were pros back in the day that didn't even look at all the key bindings on like the game, and like one pro like season 3 came out and was like, did you know if you held the tilde button you can walk through the minions? And I was like, yeah, I knew that, but like I found out that a lot of pros didn't even know that.
Yeah.
So when you look for the best player, and like we'll see, like we'll use an example of Double F, and I see him like tweets, yeah, I already knew that, like why didn't anyone else know? But there's so much of a ceiling when you find like players that do go in depth and try to find every niche and cranny, and then I go back to the whole idea of like min and maxing either statistics or trying to figure out little niche part of the games, right? I think like in Dota there was like that one thing that just completely blew everyone's mind. It was like a blitzcrank hook or something like that. They hooked them, and then they would recalled and hooked them back into the fountain. And like there's so much levels in the game that you could have done to win and figure that out, and every game is like that. So is that teachable? No, really, to be quite truthful. So yeah, I was looking for active learners.
Okay.
I want to do that.
Another question we had, and you can say you don't know, or it's in debate, what future teams Pittsburgh Knights are looking to put together?
We're looking. We're looking. We're thinking about it.
Cool.
Yeah.
So opportunities are out there.
Opportunities are out there. No game is not within our grasp to be in.
Cool.
Yeah.
And then, let's see, we have a couple of Schell Games questions. Does Schell Games see themselves making or want to make a game that incorporates an esports scene, say VR or non-VR? Well, if it's a multi-million-dollar opportunity, I think we'd be open to it. I mean, yeah, and we talk about this internally, that where what we call ourselves, externally is a platform and game agnostic, right? Like if there's an interesting problem that can have an interesting solution, I think Schell Games is really open up to that. Do you guys want to?
Yeah, and I think that it's something that makes our studio unique and really just a great place in general, is that we can fluidly move between spaces, whereas a lot of studios are kind of stuck in one direction. Like we started off, well, we didn't start off, but like we've done a lot of work in like theme park space. We've done a lot of work in the mobile space and the social networking space. We have so many talented developers here that we can kind of navigate and turn on a dime anytime that something new and interesting comes up. And as Dwayne put it, right, if it's an interesting problem that has an interesting solution, we are absolutely looking to be in that space, because that's what we're really good at doing here. And we have a lot of avid esports fans here. So I could absolutely see in the future doing something like that.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised.
No, I wouldn't be surprised at all.
Okay. Can I ask a question for the panel?
Sure.
I actually have two of them. One's kind of lame, so I'm just going to give the good one.
I want to hear the lame one. You can't just say
Yeah,
that.
you can't do that. A really bad question and a really good one. I'll just ask a good
You
one.
guys have chosen the bad question. You've been trolled by yourselves. What's the future of World of Warcraft, do you think?
The future of World of Warcraft. As a competitive or just as an MMO?
What do you think the product future of that is? What are you seeing? Where do you want it to go?
So it's interesting because as an MMO, nothing can kill it, and so many have tried, and it defies expectations because it's a subscription model, right? And so many people have so many developers have thrown themselves against the rocks trying to beat this subscription model. Of like, hey, we're free to play and we earn through this.
We're
Like,
giving
hey, we're
you it for free.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
please play our game.
Yes, exactly. Like, we will pay you to play our game, please. And just nobody can stop it because of WoW's entrenchment, right? And that is why I think WoW still has a huge life cycle in front of it, because no matter what, you are still going to have all those millions of players who have played the game before, right? And they will always keep coming back. Maybe in fewer numbers each time, but every time you release a huge patch, a new expansion, they're going to get that nostalgia factor, right? That nostalgia hits, and they think like, oh wow, my character was almost max level, I should go back in. And then you got the hooks in them again, right?
But does it have Battle Royale?
It could.
I mean, new Battleground.
Wow, that's oh my god. I
Realm,
would definitely play that. I mean, it's called Realm Royale, right?
Right, yes, exactly.
It has class
Yeah.
shooters, right? Yeah.
I think one of the cool things that we all can learn, both esports and developers, from them is that you don't want to try and balance for perfection, right? You want to intentionally misbalance your game so that the learners learn something new, and the tweakers have to retweak, and everybody evolves, and then you can add some features along the way and get somebody involved in the new character that blew up all the balance and everything, and you're kind of setting yourself up for long-term success. But you gotta get bootstrapped first, right? You can't just
Yeah.
do that with a flop
Yeah, exactly.
to start off.
It's telling that every MMO that's come out since WoW came out has been called a WoW killer,
Yeah.
and it's still alive.
Yeah. And like the Eastern markets are the only ones that have sustainable long-term MMOs
Like,
that stick
Nexon.
around. Right,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And like, you know, Square Enix has had Final Fantasy 11 and 14 that have stuck around as well and continue to be successful. But like, if you're talking about the West, like, I don't know that anything's ever going to kill WoW until Activision pulls the plug.
They literally stopped trying to make new content. They're going back to classic, and they're like, "You'll buy it, just go."
So I actually never played WoW. I played Guild Wars 1 instead. Rip that game.
Wait, my character's not still available?
Well, like Guild Wars 1, like, you know, it's dead. And then Guild Wars 2 is just not the same game. It's not the same game.
Yeah.
Tough times.
And when you have that much momentum, you can do things that make other games obsolete, right? Anytime a new MMO comes out and says, hey, we have this new feature, WoW's like, 2 months later, now we do too. Now what are you gonna do, right? There's nothing you can do.
We can't kill this thing.
And then WoW can also like afford to make mistakes because of like brand loyalty and things like that. So like as long as they, you know, roll back or correct it or something, right? Like they can afford to try anything, and people will eat it up, and maybe they'll say like, oh, I bought 15 copies and I hate it, or whatever. Right?
They
Like-
survived Pandaria.
Yeah.
Right, yeah, if you can survive that, you can survive anything.
Plus, they have a big enough user base that they can have a test server with real attendance.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
That makes it
true.
So, was that your good question or bad question?
That was my bad question.
Okay, what's your good question?
No, my good question is how does Schell Games and the Knights, what do we do together if we do something? And you don't have to answer that today, but it's a food for thought type thing.
Well, first of all, I'm gonna get one of these sweet jerseys.
Oh, yeah.
That's the first thing that Schell Games is gonna do.
Alright.
Hey, already got the
I didn't even
t-shirt.
have to
yeah.
do the like
You guys already repping
the
us.
shameless
Here's the-
merch plug.
here's-
I saw you
the
bring this in,
problem.
I was like, I gotta have one of those.
Yeah, here's the problem with like esports merchandise is Roll20, which is a Dungeons & Dragons online application. They got a Heroes of the Storm team. I love Dungeons & Dragons. I love Heroes of the Storm. That was an instant jersey buy for me, right? The team got obliterated like 3 or 4 months later. Like the sponsor left the scene, ownership changed hands, and now they're a completely different team. And it's like now that jersey's obsolete, right?
Yeah.
Like you buy I mean, I have a Jung Ho Gung jersey for the Pirates, right? Which is also arguably obsolete now.
He's back.
But it's still a Pirates jersey.
He's
right?
back.
Yeah,
He's
he is back.
He's back. Yeah,
So,
what,
like,
2 seasons, 2 seasons.
Right, yeah,
exactly.
So no matter what, I can always wear that Pirates jersey and feel good about like, oh, at least I got a Pirates jersey to wear to PNC Park, right?
Right.
But that Roll 20 jersey is now like, what am I going to do with that? Like the team just doesn't exist anymore. And so that's why I think it's really cool that we're starting to localize as well, is that I'm going to go buy this Pittsburgh Knights jersey because, number one, it's gorgeous. It's going to make my abs look amazing.
It's so slimming.
You don't even have to put someone else, a player's name on it.
Right, yeah.
Your own idea.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Like,
Is that a feature? Can
Yeah.
I do it?
Yeah.
Got the
that's
Maynard
his-
on here
Oh, look
right
at that.
now.
Oh,
Put it-
snap.
Put it on, your name on it. You just
Turn that around.
There you
and then,
go.
And then it'll last forever. And then a year from now, I'm gonna be like, that's season 1 murder. Oh, I got my
This guy's
rose.
devious.
I have the rose knights now. Now we're red and black or something, right?
Right.
Supporting breast cancer.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
right.
Got the pink in there.
Don't do the Bumblebee uniforms like the Steelers.
Yeah.
Please do. Please do. I love the bubble.
We're gonna be
We've
fabulous.
got a lot of pictures.
I think
for
it's-
the
I think
art.
it's great.
I'll cut you some slack this time, but
I love them.
all right.
No, they're like that terrible awesome, you know? It's like,
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
that is a style
Right.
where it's so campy and terrible.
like,
that
it's
it's
so
good.
bad. It's like yes.
I mean,
Why-
no one's
why
forced to
doesn't
be
every-
Tywin, right?
Like the Seattle Seahawks, like their terrible lime green. Like I love it. Like it's so bad.
No,
It's like watching The Room.
poison for the
It's like watching the
So I have a question about just esports in general when it comes to age.
Yeah.
Right. So we all get to the point in our lives that we look at the LeBron Jameses or the new hot like rookie that comes into a league and you say, oh my gosh, I'm 15 years older than this person, right? And they're kind of a hero of mine, which is like this weird moment of, oh, I'm never gonna do what they do. Like my time has passed. In the back of our minds, we're always still thinking like, maybe I'll play for the NBA someday, right? Like up to a certain point, you're always like, there's still time for me to make it, right?
Gotta get on the court.
Right, like, if I just go
Just give me 2 years. I'm in it, baby.
but like, the first competitive game that I played was SOCOM back in the day. I played a ton of SOCOM, was like nationally ranked and everything, right? And I go back and I look at that game now and I'm like, I couldn't do it, right? Like I'm now over the age of 30. I don't have the reflexes, I don't have the coordination anymore. What do you think is the right age gap for esports in general, and does it differ from game to game in your mind?
Okay, yeah. So it's a touchy subject because esports, the ecosystem kind of like works backwards, right? And what I mean backwards is kids don't go to college; they go play on a professional team, make as much money as possible, and then go to college.
Mm-hmm.
It's reversed, right? You don't go to college and then you become a professional football player or a hockey player. And I guarantee you, if the kid is good enough to come out of high school and play in the pro leagues, he would. But I mean, age restriction, you can't.
Right.
Just based off of league, because they're like, oh, let's promote. I guarantee you, there's probably a young young Tom Brady or a young Ben Roethlisberger that is willing and probably good enough to play in the league. But that just doesn't exist in traditional sports. But in esports, there is no real clear gap, right? I would think being mom, right? I would think being young and using the time where you're developing and honing your skills, especially at that age, you're learning really fast. It's like the prime time to actually learn something, right? Those kids are very good at video games. They're deep into it, and they get entrenched in it. And that's how they become good. I mean, like Faker had his breaking moment, came out of 17. I remember like Reckless from Fnatic. He was like 15 at the time, and they had to wait like an entire season for him to turn like 16 so he can play in the league. And he was like really good, and he's forever been good. And if you don't do something for a long time, obviously you're gonna have some form of skill deterioration, and it's very hard to get back. So bouncing back is really hard. But also there's our stories where like Internet Hulk, rest in peace, but in Overwatch he was 30 and he won the Apex Cup, essentially the World Cup for Overwatch at the time. It was like the peak of like Overwatch. So no, I don't believe that there is ever an ideal age, because this system's not there yet, but it will get there, where there will be support for players to have longevity. I get really worried about Realm Royale and things like that because they have update the game like every day. I'm like, no, you need to like let it live and thrive for like at least a month and then update the game, please. Don't be like PUBG and update the game like every 6 months. But you know what I mean. The updates give you time to adapt and learn a new ceiling. So that's a skill in itself. Though that's why I always say active learning. If the game changes all the time, you need to be able to find like the new thing, be on it, because maybe you're not just good at a patch, but you're good at the next patch, right? So there are opportunities to still remain relevant, but it's how you do it and how you get there from point A to point B. I wish there was a world where a 15-year-old Fortnite player can still play in the league, and I do support that in a way, but it's kind of like you need to monitor it, if that makes sense, right? There is an overage, and you do sometimes lack other skills when you like dive everything into one eggs all in one basket.
A lot of the regulations in traditional sports leagues that stop that thing from happening, they're there for a reason.
Yeah.
So that those kids can go to school and have a relatively normal life.
Mhm.
Now, a broader discussion on age in esports goes back to Brood War, because it's really warped this idea that once you get old, you're done. We don't really have a good case study on what.
Yeah.
We don't have a good case study on what, like, the ramp of being good is as you age. Because in Korea, the best players have always been from Korea. You start at 14, because that's like when they're allowed to drop out of high school. They're put into a barracks and they're forced to play 100 hours a day with a whole bunch of strangers, right? And then once they reach 21, they have to join the army. So they have to stop playing. They're done for a couple of years.
I brought a lot.
Unless they join
I brought
Air
Tammy.
Force team or
Right.
something like that, right?
There's been a disruption there, but for most intents and purposes, the retirement age is 21 in esports because they have to join the army or the Air Force. And that's,
Right.
like, Koreans are going to be out of the picture unless they change citizenship, which has opened up recently, because there are a lot of leagues in North America or Europe that they can go compete in. But like, we don't have a clear picture of what happens when a player keeps playing on into his late 20s without that big break. The closest you can look at is, I don't know, White Raw. He's
like 40
he's like
something, right?
40 something. He's still bopping people on the ladder.
No kidding.
And most
he's
of
trained.
I think most of the Virtus Pro members are all above 30.
Yeah.
So it's still a thing.
Going into
You
the
got a chance.
You're telling me my excuse that I'm not a professional esports player right now, being age, is just I'm just bad.
There's a lot of conjecture that
10,000
the
hours.
reflexes are
I'll
slower.
guarantee you 10,000
10,000
hours.
hours.
The 10,000 hours into a shooter, you'd be good at all shooters. Trust me.
So, but I think if we're taking StarCraft and example though, like we also see that it's kind of similar to traditional sports in that it's becoming like a generational sport, right? So like you'll have a
That's true.
player who when they're young they're a pro, and then as they age they become a team coach, and then maybe like an announcer or MC or something. But like they stay in the game, like they're still relevant in that industry.
That's the other thing that we're seeing, and as esports professionals, we love to see this, is that everyone who likes to play games, when they go into their professional life, when they leave school, they want to stay in the esports realm as much as they can. And they'll do that even when they have families, they'll bring their kids into it. And this is, for many people, this is a way for them to stay connected to their gaming roots without spending 20 hours a day playing. And that's, like, people are facing the reality of being adults and making it compatible with their gaming lifestyles.
Mhm.
And esports is a really easy entry point to do that.
Very cool.
A cool auxiliary point also is that you may not win the championship anymore. Maybe you will, but
Yeah.
if you have the charisma, you can be Ninja, you can be Day 9, you can be Dendy.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, all these guys, I don't think any of them are, well, I hope I'm wrong for all of them, but I don't think any of them are going to win championships anytime soon. But no one can argue that they're continuing to be super successful at esports.
Right.
And there's announcer paths for them.
That's right.
Huck just became the president of the Craft Esports.
For
Boston
Overwatch, yeah.
Uprising.
Boston Uprising. Yes.
Right. And even in traditional sports, if you look at like, I forget what it's called, Ice Cube's new basketball
Yeah, the
league.
3-man league.
3-man
Oh,
league.
yeah, the 3-man.
He's
yeah.
bringing in old retired basketball players
That's
to
right.
play in a
Allen
3-man
Iverson.
league. So like that stuff still,
Hey, oh,
still
the
happens.
answer?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, that's just playing. I think.
And you know what? People would love to see a blast from the past. That's
Yeah.
stuff that people will sign
Absolutely.
up to watch. I think we had a League of Legends team that went into relegations that signed up with like the meme dream team of like a whole bunch of old players.
They lost every game.
Yeah, they lost every game, but it was worth it. You know, they sold a ton of jerseys. That's what matters.
There you go. There you go.
Well, we have stuff like, professional golf, right? Like,
Right.
you have an age differentiation there for, if you can no longer compete in the PGA, then, you have a senior league, right? And so, yeah, I guess there is precedence for other sports.
Except for Ernie Els. He's gonna be playing golf until he's 90.
Yeah, there are certain people that
Yeah,
are like,
he's-
you are not pushing me to the old.
Yeah, that's right.
There's the one Counter-Strike team, the Old Guys Club.
Yeah.
And it's like a bunch of retired
Yep,
Counter-Strike
they're like
players,
all 60, 70 years old.
Yeah,
That's
but
awesome.
Shroud's 23, okay? Like, Old Guys Club.
Oh, no, I'm talking about there is a
It's like a
60,
senior.
70, there's a
Yeah.
senior
Yeah.
CSGO team.
Oh, for real?
Oh, I thought that's what you were referring to. I was like, no, that exists.
Yeah, it's real, yeah.
But the old guys club, I think it was like Shroud,
Sean Garrett.
Sean Garris.
Nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, there's a name I haven't heard forever.
I think I have a.
Anyone want water?
I'll take
I
water.
brought a whole bunch of Mountain Dew.
Thank you for this Mountain Dew, I appreciate it.
I'm sorry. I haven't drank Mountain Dew in like 15 years.
It's like this is a more
That's why
local
you're not an
question.
e-sport champion.
Couldn't
We
get
were
your-
figuring it out.
This is the low key announcement like of our newest sponsor.
I was actually going to say we should have checked to see if you guys had any drink sponsors.
See,
Yeah.
like I said, I actually love Mountain Dew.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, Mountain Dew.
If they're gonna pay me, I'll drink it.
Do you guys remember Balls?
Oh,
Yeah,
boy.
balls.
Hell yeah.
Great days.
Yeah, so I was in a sport bar the other day, and they had mostly Pirates, right? And they had two screens showing the World Cup. And like my immediate thought when I'm always in a situation is like, man, I wish this were esports. I don't want to watch either of those sports. No one's watching the World Cup in this bar, right? Like, do you guys have plans? Is there a partnership? Is there anything local on South Side to get like one screen?
Yeah, so that's funny. The Knights do own a space in the South Side. So we, believe it or not, just through sheer assets. So we own Karma, and we were looking to do a partnership with Casey's on the South Side to do some form of like esports like every Sunday,
Yeah.
or just have like a screen up in one of the monitors. Definitely doable. Just haven't really seen the interest of something like that, maybe. Especially if it's not the Knights, because we haven't been able to generate enough content to put it on like a 24/7 like loop
Yeah,
or something,
yeah.
right? Or just have it within our calendar to have so many teams that they're just playing every week.
Yeah, I think I've been to events in the city, like the Looking for a Group to the south does
Yeah.
like an international, and they'll show it there, right? But like, yeah, there's not really like it. Kind of sucks to be at home watching a stream,
Yeah.
and then
Mhm.
like I Twitch chat. I want real people, right?
Yeah.
Like
Mhm.
that's an experience that I think the city's missing for sure.
So I
Good
think
question.
a different. I think we're thinking about a different approach, and I'm gonna tell you about it, even though we haven't really started on it yet. I think one of the cool things that we want to do software-wise is make cooperative watching of media a cool thing, a real thing. Like you and I can drop by Discord and I can queue up a Dota replay
Yeah.
from the international or like the regional qualifiers are like today or something like that.
Yeah.
And you and I can watch it. I can just send you a link, and you can watch the exact same spot where I am. We share controls. You and I are talking over Discord, loving this, you know, and watching it. There's no Twitch stream, or maybe we can share a Twitch stream link if you prefer. You know, sharing media, enjoying it online together is kind of the VR of media.
Right.
Google Hangouts used to have that feature, right? There was like the YouTube.
Yeah, they had the YouTube Live stuff. I don't know whatever happened to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it got popular enough. I remember when they had the Dalai Lama and stuff on there, and
I used to watch. I would go in Google Hangouts and I'd watch like StarCraft replays with a bunch of buddies because
Right.
it was like synced, right?
That's how you get better.
Yeah, the
You
syncs-
coach
yeah,
coach
syncs
with
is-
the replays.
And then
Is
Barcraft
essential.
came out, and then we just did Barcrafts.
yeah, yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
I mean, Barcraft was a really successful program. I think in a lot of ways, the fact that StarCraft 2 scene died down a little bit, like strangled it, and no other game kind of picked it up
Yeah. Yeah.
as a program, which is kind of a shame.
You need a catchy name for it. That's why.
Right. League crafts, league bars just doesn't work.
No.
Cool. We have one more. Did I miss any questions from the live chat?
I don't think so.
Okay. So we have another question for Schell Games, if we've done any work on the VR treadmills or the Infinideck. So we work with, like Mike said earlier, we work with a lot of cutting edge technology. Some we're able to talk about, some we're not able to talk about, but we're always open to looking at new things. So if you have something that you want to send to us, then we can talk. But we don't typically comment on the exact technology that we are able to work on. So we'll it's getting close to 8, so we'll do some final wrap ups. So what big tournaments or events do the Knights have coming up that you'd like to talk about?
So next week we have the PUBG, the last stage of the PUBG, the PGI, which is in Leicester, England. If we come top 3, we'll be representing actually Europe, but American team for the PUBG World Finals. That's
So you could be in the top 3.
We gotta be top 3 at this next event next
Okay.
week, and then the following month after that will be the PUBG Worlds, where we will be playing against all the Asian teams as well.
Cool.
All the American teams, European teams, and Asian teams. So that's cool.
That is cool,
It's
yeah.
a $2 million prize pool. Fortnite and Realm Royale. I think there's something that might happen in DreamHack Atlanta, which will be in November.
Okay.
I think that's it for the upcoming week, unless I'm missing something. But those are like the 2 main things. But
And
there's lots of that.
You're doing good right now in the was it GLL, the PUBG League?
Yeah. So GLL, we're in first.
Yeah.
For
Nice.
GLL. So there might be, I forget on the schedule, it'd probably be in the next couple weeks, maybe right after PGI, GLL will go back to Romania and compete, and actually compete with 4 players. That was insane.
Jeez.
Yeah, we competed in GLL with only 3 members because the one person was sick or had stage fright or something like that because it was his first LAN ever, and so that won't happen again. But we still.
He was like, nah, this ain't for me.
It's like that happened once.
That's a bad time to figure out it ain't for you.
His first LAN.
We still got chicken dinners too.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we still won.
Still won some.
So I think it came in 9th because we played it with a handicap.
Yeah.
But yeah, DreamHack, we came in 2nd, beat out a lot of the other teams. FaZe beating us. But I mean, like, I think just due to the caliber of like what we put our players through and what we expect of them, and it shows through our results of like we know how to build it from the ground up and compete with the big guys, right? Like FaZe Clan is backed by Mark Benioff, right? Like the guy owns Salesforce, so he's a multi-billionaire. And then like I think Optic came in like third right after us. And Optic is backed by the Texans.
You guys went up against some really big names.
Yeah. So like, we're making waves in this space, and we're doing what we can against those bigger teams, and we just really want to put Pittsburgh on the map and just rep the black and gold in esports.
And then the best ways to follow you guys are your Discord channel, obviously.
Yeah. You can find us on discord.gg. /Knights, partner on there, got the little unique code, unique URL, on Twitter, KnightsGG, Facebook, also KnightsGG, YouTube at the Pittsburgh Knights, and then Instagram, just Knights. I got that one.
Nice.
Just Knights.
Just Knights.
Yeah,
that's all
Vegas
right.
Golden Knights were hounding us for that one.
Yeah.
I was like, nope, it's mine now. It's funny because it's funny because I had gotten all the trademarks and everything already for the Knights before the Vegas Golden Knights ever had been like a thing.
Yeah.
I didn't even know that there was gonna be a Knights gold, like a hockey team.
Yeah.
And like, oh, it's funny.
Oh, that's great.
So funny.
That's great. And one time in Vegas that the house didn't win. Thank you. So, thank you. So for us, you can follow us at Schell Games for Twitter /Schell Games for Facebook and YouTube and LinkedIn, all that good stuff. Thank you so much for you guys coming. This was a lot of fun.
No, thank you for having
So-
us.
Yeah.
It was a pleasure.
So we.
Thanks for the dinner.
Oh, hey, you're very welcome. Yeah, Noodles and Company. If somebody asked us what was for dessert, I believe is it Rice Krispies?
There are giant cookies and Rice Krispies over there.
Yeah. So Noodles and Company always hooks us up, so we appreciate them. Well, I mean, we still pay, but it's good food. It's good food.
Oh, I thought that was gonna be a sponsor.
Yeah, right?
I was like, wow, that's so cool.
Not
where's
sponsored
the-
yet.
where's the hookup?
Noodles and Company. But
Sponsor us.
Noodle Nights has a good ring to it.
Yeah,
the Noodle Knights.
Yeah, sell out. Title sponsorship.
Yeah, let's do this again.
Yeah,
Yeah,
of course.
sounds good.
I'm down.
Cool. Well, thank you guys.
See you soon.
See you next time.
Till next time.